Celeste was a game that took the year 2018 by storm, despite it going under most people's radar at the time. It garnered an overwhelmingly positive feedback from the majority of both video game journalists and players alike. It sported a highly precise platforming experience that had you dying again and again, and again, and again, and again. The story of Celeste follows Madeline, a girl wanting to reach the summit of the titular Celeste Mountain to overcome her personal struggles with anxiety and depression. Although Madeline's goal at the start of the game is as simplistic as climbing the mountain to prove to herself that she can do something difficult, the game quickly dives into more dark and serious themes later on. Celeste Mountain clearly symbolizes the arduous task of accepting one's flaws and imperfections. In fact, the whole game is an allegory to exactly that: mental health and self-acceptance. Those, however, are no easy feat, and just like the journey to self-love, Celeste is a seriously difficult game. The tried and tested, albeit simple, jump, dash, and climb mechanics are stringed together to perform what I can only describe as some of the most responsive platforming I've ever played. The game's levels are simple enough to not necessarily be puzzles, but have a high enough skill requirement to make you fail. And believe me, you will fail. A lot. The gameplay loop of play, die, learn, repeat is a very satisfying thing in Celeste. Being able to clear a room that had you die over and over and over again is a feeling like no other. Unlike most games where making mistakes and ultimately dying is a bad thing, Celeste takes this concept and flips it on its head. The game gives you a death counter that increases every time you, well, die. Interestingly enough though, if you do decide to replay a specific stage to either collect strawberries or complete the stage with fewer deaths, the game doesn't actually reduce the number of deaths you have. This is such a fitting mechanic for a game that is focused on the topic of self-acceptance. It tells the player that they should be proud of what they accomplished, no matter how difficult it was to get there. Speaking of accomplishments in the game, strawberries are optional collectibles that the player can try to get on their runs. While they don't really have a practical use in-game other than bragging rights to your friends, I think that collecting them is worth the extra difficulty, for the most part. I can't really be bothered with collecting all of them, especially in harder stages, as I've never really been a completionist in gaming, but I do see how someone who is a completionist can see value in that. I'm not entirely sure as to why strawberries were chosen to be the collectibles in the first place. I like to think that since strawberries represent love and perfection, it outlines how loving oneself is the only way to be the best version of themselves. Running away from all your imperfections makes you feel like a hollow shell of your former self, and the only way to fix that is to start loving the rough, jagged parts of you, which is admittedly a difficult but worthwhile thing to try and accomplish. Or it could just be some pun on one of the creators' names and not have any real significant meaning like some other platformers that have fruits as their collectibles. But who knows? Although the latter seems to be the more likely possibility, I still do genuinely consider my personal headcanon because of how Celeste uses objects, people, and things to symbolize other objects, people, and things. Just as how the mountain is an allegory to the struggle of self-love, another important symbol in the game is the part of Madeline which she hates, more colloquially known in the fandom as Badeline. Badeline is hands down my favorite character in the game. While at first glance she seems like the personification of Madeline's doubts, fears, and depression, I think she's more than that, in a different way. I personally think that Badeline represents Madeline's coping mechanisms, and that's why she thinks that she is the cause of her anxiety and depression. In reality though, it was only the case because of how poorly and impulsively she handled her problems. Nevertheless, I love how Badeline completes Madeline, both narrative-wise and gameplay-wise. For those of you who don't know, when Madeline finally comes to terms that she just can't leave Badeline behind and must accept her as her other half, they reunite and become one again. This gives Madeline the ability to do, wait for it, double dashes. I did kind of wonder why a game like Celeste lacked a very basic feature like the double jump, when the gameplay would have been perfect for it. I was very pleased to find it added after the aforementioned reunion of both characters, which not only improved the gameplay to be much smoother, but also made the previous stages completely negligible due to the extra jump, again reinforcing the idea that loving all parts of yourself makes anything in life a bit more bearable. I think screenshots don't really give Celeste's art the credit it deserves. I mean, sure, it seems simplistic, but I would argue that the art is best when you actually play it. Going into the game, I wasn't really the biggest fan of the art style myself. However, after having finished the game, I can honestly say that the art style really grew on me. The sprites were clearly well made and had such detail in mind. I mean, look at this snakely wriggly son of a b****. I also find it really interesting that the developers chose to indicate that Madeline's dash is used up by changing her hair color instead of opting for the more traditional UI element. It kind of reminds me of how Dead Space used the character's armor to show their health and ammo instead of using a UI element for it. It's quite a small thing, but I think it's a nice touch since the player doesn't need to keep looking back between the character and the UI, a much needed feature for a precise platformer like Celeste. Now let's move on to the sound design, and I must say, the music in this game is top notch. Each area has distinct and original soundtracks that are all unique enough to not sound generic, but also similar enough to not be incoherent. The soundtracks usually start off solemn and slowly pick up steam as you traverse to the different levels of the game. They make the already methodical and fast-paced gameplay seem almost like a rhythm game to me. Sometimes I feel like an absolute gigachad just demolishing the different levels of the game while being in complete sync with the music. I keep finding myself going back and listening to Celeste's music when I'm working on something. Honestly, it's similar to how Mario Kart's music can put you in the zone and manage to keep you there for as long as the music is playing. I genuinely recommend the playlist for anyone looking to have some cool background music while doing something, so I'll be linking the full playlist by Lena Rain in the description below. All in all, I believe that Celeste is a must-play for everyone out there, especially for those who are looking to immerse themselves in a solemn and meaningful world. If you've ever been in a dark place in life before, then Celeste will really resonate with you, with its overall themes, music, and cordial messaging. Celeste manages to tell a compelling story that most people can also empathize with. Combining relatable and grounded storytelling with a well-imagined and creative world, Celeste truly distinguishes itself as one of the most memorable platformers out there. Despite not being the most unique or original game idea ever, I think Celeste is proof that an idea executed properly creates a game that is an order of a magnitude better than a game that has a great concept but also has horrible execution.